Hey, Gavin, Lurssen here. I'm sitting with old friends Sheldon Gomberg and Kevin Smith. We go back a lot of years. Sheldon has just got this amazing repertoire of work. We worked a lot together on Ben Harper, and Kevin has worked with Jackson Browne multiple times, and so we've all bonded over that, and they now work together, and it's just a great in the family type situation. So you guys are kind of the same cloth. You know, when you work with Jackson, who's a legendary singer-songwriter in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you know, just an epic artist, and somebody like Ben, who you work with frequently. These are people that are amazing singers, but the band and the sound of the band and the way the band is blended is equally as important. So there's so many moving parts that have to come together. How do you guys approach this? What's your favorite vocal mics? Where do you guys go?
I mean, U47s are always top of the heap, and C12s are fantastic. SM7s sometimes are the perfect call. You know, and I love RACA 77s too.
What's the difference between taking a vocal with the band playing and an isolated vocal booth? What's the approach that's different?
You know, U47s pick up a lot more stuff around them, and 77s have a figure of 8 pattern, so they'll pick up what's behind them too. The SM7 is a tighter, so if you're in the room cutting live with them, I'll use an SM7, because if you're in there with a 47, it's picking up everything. I've run into that, and it's not fun. And they tend to have a little more mid-rangey kind of bite to them, you know. The 47s are a lot warmer. C12s have a little more brightness to them. 77s are warm, and I love ribbon mics.
Everybody watching wants to know: analog tape, digital workstation, in the box. What's the approach, both you guys? What's the approach that's different when you use one versus the other? Because you guys are working with iconic artists that are known for that analog flavor. So when you work in the box, how do you make it sound like that?
The most important part to me of getting a great recording is the musicians, the artists. After that, you know, with the microphones and front end that I have here, the room, the pre's, the outboard gear and stuff, when it gets to Pro Tools, it sounds great. I love tape, but it definitely is a lot more work, you know, a lot more of a pain. But I love the way it sounds. In fact, I was just about to sell the machine because nobody's used it in about 4 or 5 years. And we put up a reel to play it, and I was like, oh, no, this sounds so good, I can't sell. Hopefully we're going to get back into that analog world. But then you have to have, you know, people that can not have to punch in every 30 seconds. So It depends. It's artist dependent, kind of.
Yeah.
But I answered. The expert should answer.
All right, expert.
Well, the expert already answered.
Okay, other expert.
I agree, and I think it's definitely musician dependent. It's also budget dependent too, because tape costs a lot of money. It's harder to get, and you need to also have a tape tech. You need to have someone that comes in and sets up the tape machine, make sure it's all calibrated. Ideally, you'd have one there each day to be able to do that, or you'd have a tape tech or an assistant who knows how to calibrate the machine a couple times a day during lunch break and stuff like that. But also, I think a lot of people get excited about tape because they, you know, want to do that whole old school thing, but people forget you have to stop and rewind, and there's all these different pauses and breaks and things that have to happen. You run out of tape. There's a lot more documentation than it's a lot more work, but it yields a certain type of result that I think is missing from a lot of records that get made today. But some people like limitations, and then other people don't like limitations. And I think that if people, like for example with a band, you know, if you had a rehearsal room and you rehearsed all the songs for the record that you're about to make, and everybody felt really good about their parts, and you know, you're working with a producer beforehand and there was some pre-production that went in and everybody felt really confident about the songs, I feel like that would be a great opportunity to take advantage of tape and take advantage of that workflow and get the sonic benefits that you can get from it, and just that particular style of making a record, which is really cool and fun to do.
And what's your approach to that? So if you're on tape versus in the box, what do you do differently?
You have a little bit more flexibility with, that's just another thing depends on how you want to approach the record too. Like you can just use the machine, you just capture things really clean, or you can use it, which a lot of people I feel like would gravitate towards these days, of like getting that tape warmth or distortion and tweaking it in that way, so you can lean into that and kind of get those sonic, the uniqueness that tape can provide by overdriving the amps and hitting the tape harder and stuff.
So is it safe to say you'll capture on tape and then put that all into Pro Tools or something like that, and then start working on your blends like that way?
Yeah, I mean, I would approach it however they would want to go about doing it. If they wanted to just capture it clean, or if they wanted to like take some risks and push things a little bit harder. You can't. I mean, you're committing, but if that's the approach that they want to take, that sounds fun to me.
And then for me, it would be dump it over to Pro Tools.
Exactly, and then dump it. Totally.
Yeah, I sometimes get in conversations with clients where, they want to bring me their digital file and have me put it on tape and then work from tape. And
including myself.
And yes, well, sometimes it's the opposite too. The digital file will come in and we'll keep it there.
Yeah,
Instead of
that's how it is 99, 100% of the time.
Yeah.
But we've had that conversation.
Yeah, we've done many incarnations of how to approach something and always work together to figure out how to serve you best so you can serve the fans. What I was going to say, though, is I'll explain to the clients that our analog console, when we convert, very thoughtfully, carefully, with word clocks, digital analog converters, and the gain structure, which is very important, everything that happens to convert it to analog, that kind of tape sound gets created through the process of that alone, independent of what you even do to it, But it influences what we do to it. So if we work, off the digital file, if it's through the console like that, it's a slightly different approach than if we were to go in the box and do it all digitally. So we focus mainly on the analog, and that whole thing happens. And people have come to know that at this point, but that whole analog vibe happens without having to go to tape.
Right.
And from what you guys are discussing and the way your mic pre's are and the console and the gear wall you've got back here, that it's the same thing even when you're working in the box. This is how I'm hearing both your work, come out sounding pretty well analog,
Thank you. I think you have to be careful of which plugins you use and how you use them. Don't overcompress. Sometimes that gives you that harsh digital sound, and you can't get rid of that.
Once that's there, is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the stuff with the analog thing too, it's like having it's like a cumulative thing. Like if you're making a song in your computer and you're using a lot of software instruments and things like that, but then you just get a Neve mic preamp and then a Neve and then or a compressor and a really nice mic. It's like where you kind of start to hear the analog things is like when you're using 24 channels of analog stuff, and then cumulatively all of that stuff adding together and everything's kind of going through that is really, like you said, like without using tape, you can still get that analog sound by just going through a lot of gear versus like just using one piece of analog gear isn't really going to change the whole sound of your entire song.
Yeah.
If most of it's digitally made,
Yeah.
Well, some people are looking for that digital sound.
Yeah.
We're not.
So budget dependent, you were talking about that and analog tape and all that stuff. And that is a thing. But if they come to see you and working in the box, they're still getting all this analog juju.
Right.
But it's here. It's plugged in. It's ready to go. They don't have to buy tape and take the extra time to do this and do that. They come in and they're getting that. You flip the switch and get to work, So they're still getting a lot of that anyway.
I'm definitely happy with the sounds that we get here, so.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be if it was sounding harsh and digital.
And the rest of the world is. And I've been part of that with you all these years, and it's pretty amazing that, what we go through. And we, just to point out to whoever's watching this, Sheldon and I and Kevin and I, we've worked together a lot, and we always communicate, It's not just, here's the file, do your thing. It's a very important part of the process to bring that final tonal balance.